Hi, my name is Soren Odom, and today I'm going to take you through my process of how I write music for film. So, step number one. A director comes to you with a finished film and says that he needs music. What's the first thing you gotta do? Watch the movie.
This is madness.
You gotta experience it like an audience member would. Wow! You have to see it in all the mood changes that go between the scenes and try to understand where it's heading and what needs to be accentuated and what needs to have emphasis put on it. Some directors have in their minds what it's going to sound like when it's finished, so they might have ideas. And some directors even put a temporary track or temp track on a edited piece of film just so they can get an idea of what it's supposed to feel like with music helping it. So sometimes they might use music from other movies. They might use classical music. A good example of a temp track is actually the beginning of Star Wars. Right as the Star Destroyer comes in for the first time, you hear this big, impactful, rhythmic, dun 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 from John Williams' score. The temp track for that movie was actually Gustav Holst's The Planets, and you can hear in the beginning of that symphonic work in the Mars movement where John Williams got his idea. Temp tracks can be a burden and a help to a lot of composers. A burden because a lot of composers want to be completely creative, and when you're predisposed to a certain kind of music that the director wants, then the goal is to sound like that music. So you have to take a little bit off the creative side so you can emulate a tone or emulate a style. But it does indeed give us those parameters to work with, so you can narrow it down to, okay, it needs to sound like blah. Another thing you might have to do is have what we call a spotting session, and that's when you sit down with the director and you discuss where you think the music should go in the finished film. Because a lot of times, it's not just using music all the time, it's where you don't. Step number 2 is to actually write some music. Find out what inspires you about the film, what needs to be covered musically. Does it need a love theme? Does it need a villain's theme? Does it need a hero's theme? Does it need a general theme for the picture? What sounds encapsulate that moment? What music gives you a sense of this character? Howard Shore did a really good job of this in The Lord of the Rings when he gave each sort of race of characters its own theme and its own feel of music, where the orcs and the goblins were more drums heavy and very rhythmic. And the music that represents the elves is very ethereal and very light, and a lot of vocals involved in that. Another thing I like to consider is the setting of the piece in time. Is it a period piece like Braveheart and requires the Highland bagpipes, or is it in the future with Vangelis's score for Blade Runner, requires synthesizers, things that might add extra character to the score. Step 3. You've written your music and you just need to record it. In my case, I use my computer. A lot of composers today in the business will use a computer to realize their idea of the score and then have orchestral musicians play it later for a more polished sound. On a budget, on a smaller film, sometimes you don't need that extra step. You just need to be able to get the score as best you can. And for a lot of computer programs today, virtual instruments sound pretty close. So using samples and patches that I've bought, I will play the score into my computer with a MIDI keyboard. And a MIDI keyboard just allows me to talk to my computer and play piano. So I will record all the parts and then play them into the computer to mix later. So, step 4 is to show it to the director. Have him have a look at it. See if anything needs to change. Very often they might make some tweaks in the edit and you might need to change where the music goes and how long it lasts and other little factors like that. So sometimes you need to go back and fix a little bit. Step 5. Once the director approves and you have the score finished and sent to him, time to enjoy the flick.